recording?
Oh, are we recording? Yep, I see it,
Okay.
recording
Thank
live.
you.
Okay. So thank you everyone for coming here. And just so everyone knows, we haven't formally selected a chair for this committee. So I have asked Rebecca Boer to act as chair to take us through this discussion today. So without further ado, Rebecca, you have the floor.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, I'm just for today's meeting doing that, right? And then we're gonna actually figure out who the chair is.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So basically the way that I thought to start this is that we should go over first what happened at our meeting with Michael Chimides and what the city is working on and how we as the HHA kind of fit into this whole project, right? So one of the main things specifically that Michael had talked about is that, the city is looking for 4 to 5 priority projects that can be staggered for the yearly state funding. So our project would be a part of this, consortium of other projects. It's also a very important document, the Strategic Housing Action Plan. And a couple of things to just note from this housing action plan, just right now, within the city of Hudson, 57% of our residents are renters. So I just want to say that it's so important that, yes, it's so important for home ownership, right? But we need to talk about our renters when we're talking about this today, right? We have a very large population of renters that need to be served. Another component of the Strategic Housing Action Plan that's quite important here is the household income distribution in our city. So 19% of our residents are making anywhere between $50,000 to $75,000, but the bulk of our residents, 30%, are making $25,000 to $50,000 a year, and 25% are making less than that. So a majority of our residents in the city are actually low income residents. So I just wanted to, as of the Strategic Housing Action Plan, I just want to put that out there as well. So when we're talking about our project goals and how we're building out these criteria, is like these are the key pieces that we need to help educate us on what population we're serving. So another thing that Michael had said from the city is that the goal of the city is to spread housing across the city. And the goal of the city is to serve as many populations as possible. And who do we as the HHA focus on? So the big thing that Michael really illustrated to us is that now is the time for us to figure out our project goals and to have a unified vision for how we want to move forward, not only as a board, but as a community, because this is a project of the HHA, but it's also a project of the people. And so this is just how I wanted to start this because, this is a key piece in discussing what these goals are. So the main questions, right? What do we want as a community? What do we want as the HHA? What do we want as residents, right? What do the residents want? Then the next step is how do we get there? So within that how do we get there process, we need to be building out an RFP, an RFQ, or some sort of hybrid, so this is part of what we'll be figuring out. The main thing, right, is that we need our project goals to get us from step 1 to step A to step B, so once we have, our project goals and this information and we start building out the RFP, the RFQ, we're also going to be talking about what's our criteria for the developer. Like, what are our negotiables? What are our non-negotiables? What are the yeses, maybes, and the nos of this project? Basically just breaking that down really simply. And so I, would like to say, as long as everyone on the board is okay with this, the Affordable Housing Development Committee, we are working to build out these steps publicly. So we will take public comment and have people be involved from the get-go. So that's, where we're at, where we're coming from today for this first meeting. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Nope.
So
Sounds good.
what are our project goals, right? We need a shared vision. We need a shared vision with the HHA, with our residents, with our community, with our city, you know? And once, as I said, once we create the shared vision, this is what's going to help us determine, are we searching for an RFQ? Are we searching for an RFP? Are we searching for some sort of hybrid? Because we'll know how many details we really have, like how many negotiables we have, how many non-negotiables we have, as I said, you know. So one of the big things for a shared vision, right, is, are we creating mixed use? You know, do we want to create mixed use properties? So are we going to do commercial, residential, public resources? You know, this is part of this conversation that we're going to have today. What about income? Are we going to do mixed income? Are we going to primarily serve low income residents? You know, this is also part of this conversation that we need to have today, because one of the big things is that people need the ability to also have upward mobility. So do we provide you know, market rate units for people who are making over, let's say, $65,000 a year or over $75,000 a year? You know, these are the questions that we also need to answer here today. Not necessarily today, but, you know, over the course of these meetings. So I guess, you know, I have proposed project goals that I can just say for you all today, and we can just start working from there. Is everyone okay with that? Does that work?
Yes, let's go. Let's go.
Okay, so we've seen, you know, the land survey of the HHA property, right? We know what's there. We know what's owned by the housing authority. So mainly the way that we've talked about it, as far as, you know, this board, we have, you know, State Street, which is kind of all lumped together. We have the low rises, right, which is right behind Bliss Tower. We have Bliss Tower. And then we have the space behind the low rises that's currently just functioning as, you know, 2 parking lots and a grass lawn. So, you know, one of the things that we've discussed, as not necessarily as a board, but individually, is this idea of, you know, creating a space for public resources on State Street. So using State Street as a space for, you know, I guess we could call it commercial spaces and public resources. So instead of focusing on residential, which a past project like the PRC project in the past focused on residential, you know, one of the possibilities for our project goals would be to build public resources on State Street. So what would this look like? Yeah.
When you say public resources, do you mean like retail as a public resource, or do you mean like public resources like a library or?
Yeah, so that's a real question, right? So do we mean public resources like a YMCA? Do we mean housing, you know, do we mean housing like the Hudson daycare? You know, do we mean housing Head Start? Does this also mean commercial spaces, right? This is what we're all building together, collectively. So this is the question, right? Is it possible to get funding for something like a YMCA here? And I think that that would be very possible. And you know, a YMCA has been something that I've heard, you know, residents express that there is a need for that, and community members express that there is a need for that. So this is just, you know, one idea to throw out there, right? State Street could be, you know, house, you know, really lovely outdoor spaces for people to congregate, green spaces, community garden, you know, that's one way to think about State Street. Because the issue that was encountered with the PRC plan, right, was that when the soil survey was done, they found that the building that was proposed, that was 4 stories, wouldn't actually work. Is that, yeah. So the idea then is to think, well, okay, so can we build public resources there that would not be as high, you know, so that the land can actually support this sort of building? So that was kind of like the working idea around this, right? Oh, yeah, Claire. Claire, you have your hand raised?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add for people to think about like what Bliss used to be. When people remember Bliss at its most functional place is when the daycare was in there, when community resources had a space to occupy that was in reach of the people that lived in the area. So like envision it in a way where you can again walk across the street to drop your kids off to daycare and then head to work, or where the services that you need the most are not a $5 cab ride away. Just keep that image in your mind as she's describing these things.
Yeah, it's this idea that exactly as Claire said, like those resources will be at your doorstep, right? And so then, oh, Rebecca.
I don't mean to, maybe we don't need to maybe get this far into it, but I am curious. This is like a possibly controversial question, but I am curious. This is really a question. Like, so in terms, okay, so there's this idea about like concentrating poverty, right? Um, which is, seems to me, I mean, I don't know that much about the theories and the ideas around it, or the lived experience around it, but I'm curious, like the idea of, like, it seems like the movement has been supposed to be somehow that we, don't concentrate like the community of, you know what I mean? Like that the community doesn't have to be sort of like restricted in an environment. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is like with a daycare, for example, like is it a thing where it's like actually having a daycare out in the city is like a good thing because it's just sort of like like claiming the city, you know what I mean?
Can I respond?
Yes.
Um, I think I hear that concern, but when you think about how many daycares are in the city of Hudson, there's only really one affordable daycare. So to duplicate that, I don't think would be, I don't think it would be seen in that way. And also, there's no land in Hudson. Like, there's nowhere to expand at the moment. So it's either keep the living conditions the way that they are, or within our power, give a new neighborhood. You know what I mean? And that's the way that we have to frame it to folks, because it's not, we're taking ownership of what our future looks like in the crux of gentrification. I mean, they're watching, we're all sitting here watching beautiful things happen around us, and we hear the word beautification and upgrading all around us. That's most people's mission when they become interested in Hudson, and this specific area is often overlooked. And when the idea comes of changing the face of this living situation, it takes a back burner because people are afraid of change. But how else can we give a better quality of life if not in the spaces that we have ownership of? So I do hear your concern, but I think that for the folks that are living this experience, to have somebody invest in them and give them the opportunity to invest in themselves is more of an empowerment than something that's holding them back.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's like 100%. And one of the things, right, is that we are the board of the housing authority. This is the land that we oversee, right? This is the space that we oversee. This is, we don't have access to other locations in the city, right? This is where we have access to.
Yeah,
And
I was specifically just thinking about the daycare that's on Warren Street, you know what I mean? That's right there.
yeah, they actually need a new home.
And we're trying to bring them into the housing authority. We're trying to build a space for them.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So that's the idea, because there is a real need to rehouse the Hudson daycare. They need a permanent space, they need a home. And so this is, one of the proposed goals, right?
Thanks.
To provide that space for the Hudson City.
Yeah, and before I was on this board, when they were building the State Street side, Hudson Daycare was actually a part of that. So they were already going to be incorporating in whatever new building was going on with the housing authority. They were bringing the Hudson Daycare over there and building them a site. And I just wanted to speak out on the Head Start, because I would say over and over again, I was like the last 3 classes, I believe actually Calvin Lewis is on here, and I believe he was actually the last class, Head Start class, that was held in Bliss Towers. So it's so important to bring that back. I mean, when it closed from Bliss Towers, it moved to Columbia Opportunities, which then had no transportation, which then moved to John L. Edwards, which closed. and I was at Montgomery C. Smith, where they still have no transportation. And this is why we need to bring it closer to home.
Yeah.
And just to echo that, I mean, Head Start, you know, this is such an important resource, and we're literally, you know, have the direct understanding of why, because we have some great community leaders literally in here right now that benefited from this program. So just to say, like, one of the things is really getting Head Start on State Street, getting the daycare on State Street, you know, this would be, I think this would be a really beautiful resource. So our just moving forward, like from State Street, now let's talk about the low rises. And I think that where we are now with the state of the low rises, I would say that this is probably like one of our primary, you know, we need to do this pretty fast, you know, to get those apartments, to get those units in a place where they're, you know, livable, not just livable, but thrivable for people, right? So one of the suggestions for the low rises is a complete rebuild, right? One of the things that we found from the past when we did the walkthrough is that these units are going to take anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 each to fully renovate. And there were serious structural issues in the building from the get-go. So basically, you know, one of the good things about this is we do have, you know, we have the past to teach us a lesson about how not to do it in the future. So one of the things, right, for the low rises that we did talk about was to build, you know, 4, 5, and 6 bedroom townhouses, much like the ones that already exist, but it would kind of coalesce in like a different form, right? And so how we want to begin talking about the low rises as well, and what we're going to do, you know, behind Bliss, where Columbia Apartments is currently, because it seems like there's a consensus that we need to rebuild. So, you know, that's another component of this. And just to like lay out all of the different pieces of the puzzle, right? Behind the low rises, now we're talking about, you know, the possibility of developing this land. So the land right behind the low rises, where there's currently 2 parking lots, there's like a grassy lot, you know, can we develop here? Can we build here? And that question is going to take a soil survey, right? We're going to need a survey of the soil and a survey of that survey will tell us what's possible. You know, how many floors can we support? How many units can we support? You know, those questions can't be answered until we know what the land is capable of. So that's just another piece of this puzzle. If we want to talk about developing this area behind the low rises, you know, creating 1, 2, 3 bedroom unit apartments, you know, possibly having a commercial and residential space has been talked about, you know, creating commercial spaces on Columbia Street, commercial spaces on State Street. This is another question that we face, right? Is, do our residents want to live above a store? Right. And these are questions that we're going to need to ask with, you know, the tenants association and with our residents is, you know, do you want this? Because this is going to help us to determine all of these negotiables and non-negotiables, because we'll be able to say, well, no, we had a meeting with our residents and they said, we don't want to live above a store. So that's why we moved our commercial spaces onto State Street. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we need to specifically lay these things out and then get public comment, get comment from our residents, so that we have already a breakdown of why we chose that, you know, and that's also going to help us inform our criteria for the developers and help us inform what we really ask for in an RFP or an RFQ or a hybrid. So any questions so far? And then we're going to talk about Bliss.
Just to point out, I think we already talked about this, just that like the developer can do the soil study. You know, that's, I don't know if you're proposing that we should do our own instead of making it part of the development process.
So this is the thing, right? Is that this is an exploratory conversation and an opening. So really, I'm just posing the questions to us and the possibilities to us, and we're going to have to work these things out. You know, in some ways, yes. Okay, if a soil survey is going to cost roughly $50,000, let's say, you know, do we want to put out, you know, an RFQ that says, we have this land, you know, we don't know what's possible, we don't know what it's going to support. One of our non-negotiables is that we need a soil survey before we get started on anything. Another way to do it is to say, okay, we have a little bit of money, you know, let's use this $50,000 to do this soil survey so we know exactly what's there, so we can propose our own building project, right? It's like, it's all there, all the possibilities are out here. We really just need to decide and make these educated decisions based on what the people want, right? So that's kind of, I'm not truly suggesting anything, you know. I just want to lay this out because it's not up to, you know, it's up to us as a board to decide, but it's up to us to decide based on what the people want. And I find that that's the consensus of the board. So it's very exciting. Okay, so the next piece of this puzzle, right? We talked about State Street, we talked about the low rises, we talked about behind the low rises. Now we're going to talk about Bliss Towers. So, you know, what is our goal here with Bliss? You know, we're going to need community and resident input to figure out, you know, because do people want a full reno of Bliss? You know, do people want this building to be fully renovated? Do they want, you know, this seal to come on the building to preserve the building for, you know, 15 more years, you know, or the extent of whatever life we can give to this building based on a renovation? And the question here is that, you know, there must be grants available for these renovations. And we did talk about, you know, one of the things with the M&T Bank loan is that this loan would pay to renovate those 25 apartments, but not really, it's 12 apartments. I guess, well, it's 19 with the asbestos variance and all of that money that we'll have to pay. So the real question here is we need to figure out what the community wants. What do our residents want? You know, would our residents want for us to focus on new development and to maintain Bliss until there's, you know, replacement housing? You know, these are questions that these are difficult questions that we're gonna need to answer, and we're gonna need to have these conversations as a community. So I just want to pose that today too. And also, you know, part of our project goals is figuring out the number of units, right? So how many units are we capable of building here? How many units can we develop here? And that's another question that, you know, would very well, it would very much help to have a soil survey to answer that. I know that the State Street soil survey was done by PRC, so we don't have access to that. Is that right? Sorry, am I talking too much?
Tim, are you there? Tim, are you there? Can you give us a little background on that? Do we have that soil survey from M&T Bank?
I do not have that information. That would have
Yeah, I
to
didn't
be,
think so.
we'd have to request that from PRC, and they're not certainly obligated to give that if they don't choose to.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we do know that PRC made a decision not to develop that land. My understanding is due to the conditions on that, in that area. So one can assume that the survey would tell us that we can't build 4 stories. I don't know that we can assume much else, but does
Is
that
that-
sound right, Tim?
I don't believe that to be correct. I believe PRC walked away after the results of the soil testing because they didn't want to invest the additional money in a foundation that would be necessary under the conditions of that site. So you can build on the site. There's nothing preventing you from building on that site, but the cost may be higher than a developer's willing to contribute to the project. And at that point, PRC didn't want to invest the additional money.
Okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't be, I mean, I feel like maybe we should, but before we spend more time kind of wondering about this soil survey question at all, maybe find out from a developer's perspective whether a developer would want to do their own survey, no matter what, because I can imagine it being a situation where that would be the case. That's just what I can imagine it being like that. I don't know. That seems likely to me.
So one of the things that it seemed like we would all really benefit from in these meetings that we're now going to be having is to get an expert to come in, possibly every week, to educate us on a different aspect of this process, right? And I'm wondering, is it possible, I know with the RFQ process, it's very specific about how you work and discuss with developers. Would it be possible to get, someone who is a developer to come and talk to us about this? Is that possible? Everyone?
It has to be possible, absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
Could we get someone to come and talk to us about this like next week, in 2 weeks or something? Because it'd be great. It'd be great to basically, I basically just opened up a can of worms, right? So now we just have to each week build more and more out of this process, right? So would
I
that be
mean, we can definitely have someone come here and speak next week. I think we just have to decide what exactly we want them to say and then find the right person. So maybe it's a question of what aspect do we want to, tackle next week? What aspect of all the many things that we're talking about?
so the
Is
soil
it going to
survey?
be, yeah,
The soil survey and the idea of like the survey of the land, just knowing like what's possible, I feel like that's a really big component of all of this, because that's kind of the piece that lets everything else fall into place. At least just understanding how many units we can build, what capacity we can support. So I wonder if, that could be kind of our first ask, is to find someone to come to talk to us about, how does this typically work with the soil survey, talk about the RFQ process a little bit, that it could probably be a combined thing, because, developers are dealing with all of this stuff, right? I just wonder, is there like some sort of process where, is it like, can you just reach out to a developer and be like, hey, we're at the housing authority, we're really curious about this, we'd love to have this conversation, can someone come in and talk to us? Or is it a more complex process?
I think in certain circumstances, I mean, we have had, visits from RUPCO at least twice, I think.
Oh, cool.
But, but they were not exactly purely informational visits. The idea was to, see if we could talk about a possible future kind of thing. So I think that it might be different if, I guess what I would suggest is that we identify a different developer, somebody who works in this area, so who would be, interested to talk with us, who, like, I know there's a short list of like really reputable affordable housing developers that are in the Hudson Valley area, like in Poughkeepsie and, around this area. And just be like, we have some basic questions about the process. Can anybody come and talk to us? I don't think that would be a problem. I wanted to mention also my friend who I mentioned previously. I think we should, at some point when we have a much more together idea of what we're actually doing, we should engage his services. That's what I wanted to put. He's super knowledgeable and very eager to help, but that's his business.
Yeah, I looked over at that website. I was like, whoa, this is exactly what we're looking for.
can you just give a summary of that then, either Rebecca, about what he does?
Well, he basically consults with housing authorities and other developers he puts together financial packages for development for affordable housing. That's what he does.
So it seems like that would be good once we're way further into, our RFP process, is to have someone come and be like, okay, this looks great, this might not work, all of those pieces.
But also I mean, he can advise on like all elements of what our questions are. You know, it's like, it's not that he just does the financial piece. He's really knowledgeable about like every element of the package of the deals. So, yeah, I'd be happy to just like set up a call, Marie, with you if you want. You're muted.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds
So
perfect, yeah.
Tim, do you know how much around a soil survey will cost? I've been looking into a lot of things on this soil survey, and I was just wondering if you knew a price, because I'm finding prices where they range from anywhere from $25 to $2,500. Do you know how much a soil survey costs, or how much it might have cost for you to do the State Street one?
Well, it varies. If we're just talking about doing a soil sample on the vacant property behind the low rise, that's a very small area. Honestly, I would think anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 you could do a soil sample for there. I think for State Street, and when they did some sampling around Bliss Towers, I think it was around 25,000. So it varies depending on the size of the scope of the project that they're doing their testing on. And I think you may be able to get a better idea just reaching out to some of these environmental companies that do soil testing. They could probably give you a pretty good idea of what that price may be. And again, just to go back on the topic of bringing in some professionals, I think one of the important factors in determining how this project moves forward, besides zoning and whether the developer feels the project's big enough where he's going to get his return on investment, is certainly the state approval. The state approval, if we're going through a state-funded program, is going to be very important. So it may be advantageous to the board, if you're looking for professional advice, would be to bring Darren Scott in. Darren is a professional planner. Besides being with the Homes and Community Renewal Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, he could probably be a first initial contact that could help guide the board in the right direction.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you should, oh, Murray, sorry.
Just a quick question. So Tim, do you think, I mean, is he's a good, bring him in next week? Or if he's, I mean, I'm sure he's very busy, but somebody early on. So this is someone we should talk to early on.
I think Darren can set the stage and really
Okay.
advise the board on how to move through the process. He's highly experienced at that.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. Does somebody want to reach out to Darren Scott? Who has I take it a few of you
Yes.
have relationships with Darren Scott.
Yeah, I can absolutely reach out to Darren.
That'd be
So
great.
If we can get Darren on next week, I know that's short notice, but that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll
Let's see
see,
if he
I
can
guess,
do
at the
it.
earliest convenience.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess the question now is, how do we want to move forward just right now today? And can we set, a specific goal aside from getting, someone like Derek Scott in next week? Can we set a sort of goal for us for a week from now, just to keep moving forward? Laying
Yeah,
in-
absolutely.
So, we have a lot of big questions here. Do we want to just kind of, do we want to just now start discussing one little piece? Do we want to now discuss, AMI, let's say? Do we want to discuss if it's going to be a mixed income, kind of get some of these ideas out here? Whatever.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay.
I don't, because I don't think there's enough of the public on yet. I think next we should have the meeting where we go over this meeting with the tenants, get as many tenants there as possible, and then put out more public notice about this subcommittee,
Cool.
next meeting dates and times,
Mhm.
and then do it again, and then start the conversation. I think this was like I think the people that are on this call right now are the people who show up to every meeting.
Claire, we've lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
I think we should make some flyers. I think we should post the Zoom information on the flyer, how to actually log on to Zoom and send it out to the Bliss residents and the low-rise residents. And I think that we should start promoting it for the next time we have this meeting and then start there.
That makes complete sense. And I would say that as a part of that, getting the HHA website as a functional place where people can go for this information, I think would benefit us all greatly, because that means we could just say, go to this website, and then there'll be a big button there that just says like, click this, and then it'll have the Zoom link embedded,
Yeah.
and it just takes you to the meeting,
Okay.
We don't need to be creating roadblocks. Like, I mean, personally, if I got a sheet of paper that had like a Zoom link on it and I had to type it out, I would be
Yeah.
pretty
What
mad.
about, what about, does the housing authority, or can the housing authority have like an Instagram? Could that be
Yeah.
a useful tool?
From my understanding, yes. It's just about, how many people we can reach, right? I think Facebook's a really important resource. Instagram's going to be an important resource. But I think really flyering around the building, and just like Claire said, is going to be, the space where we really reach the most residents. And
Yeah, I
that's,
just meant in terms of like, how do they actually get an easy link,
The website, she's saying, we have to update the website and make it user-friendly. And then we would tell them to go to the website to get onto these calls.
at this point, I'm about to just make a Squarespace. You know what I mean? Like at this point, I'm about to just start doing this. So we do have someone that's raised their hand from the public, and please take your place. What? Hello?
Hi, Michael Hoffman here. I'm with Citizens of Hudson, and we would be happy to offer our help in terms of getting the word out. Our Instagram account is for your use. So happy to make a post about that, and also help with design efforts for creating a flyer and thinking about how to most easily get people onto the Zoom call.
Thank you,
That
Michael.
sounds great. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I have a question for Tim. Tim, if we wanted to send flyers all around, how do you get the flyers to people? Do you put them inside their mailbox, or do you tape them to their door? How does that happen?
Yeah, we're not able to access their mailboxes, so we put a flyer in front of their door on the floor for each resident.
And then what do you do for the Columbia Apartments residents?
It's
Do you
in the
stick it
door.
in their mailbox?
In their
the
door. Yep. Yeah, so the community engagement strategy, or the platform that we use to engage the community in this process, is going to be very important because of the pandemic and the restrictions. So I think Michael's idea of providing some assistance and using every technical platform that we can use to reach our residents, because we have elderly residents in the community, we have disabled residents. So I think part of what we should talk about at the next meeting is, what platforms do we create so we can reach everyone? Because that was one of the shortcomings of the process the last time. We weren't able to reach everyone or have a platform for everyone to engage with. So I think that'll be important.
Are we able to tape these engagements on every floor? So then they're just stuck on there? Because I know if I'm taking something home, I put it to the side and I lose it, I forget about it. Are we able to have these taped on every floor, letting people know what's going on, right where they're pushing that button for the elevator? Are we able to do that?
You know, Ravonda, that's a great idea. And maybe we invest in just a school cork board, and we put it up on every floor, and we post everything for this project on those boards on every floor. I think that's a
Yes.
great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the larger comprehensive strategy of engaging everyone that we can possibly reach out to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay,
Can I ask sorry, just a quick thing? I also think we haven't really done very much in terms of issuing press releases, where we always are waiting for the press to sort of show up and ask us questions, and we aren't. So I think that this board should really, especially when we're reaching decision points, we should really be more proactive about communicating externally by doing press releases. So it's just
Yes,
something to keep in mind.
yes,
It's
I
just
agree
to
with
put on
that.
the list. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Another thing, I was just asked by a member of the public whether or not there's an email list for the residents of the HHA. Do we have an email list?
I don't know if I can make that public or not without permission. I would have to find out.
But we do.
Uh,
Or
I
you
think
don't know if, oh, I see.
we have emails for some residents, but not all. But I think we'd have to get permission to use that. I'll have to check, Rebecca.
Okay, so let me just say that it seems like our primary focus for next week, what we will all be working on is to get as many residents and as many people here to provide their input as possible ongoing into the future. And so it seems that just kind of like naturally that has coalesced that this is going to be our focus for the next week. So we will be making sure, get some cork boards, we'll get a website up there within the week to make sure that there's an easy Zoom link, the button's there. Nobody has to go around searching for anything. It's very clear. The email list is another thing that, Tim, if you can explore that, if we can use that as a resource, that would be great.
Gotcha.
And then also the Tenants Association, Claire, there's a meeting, is that still the case was it the 23rd?
I think Claire's not here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, well, we'll just figure that out, but that will be our main focus
Okay.
goal then.
May I just say, I think the 23rd is the cleaning supply giveaway. I don't remember there being a
Right,
tenants
because
association
that's on
meeting
a
that day.
Saturday. It's a
Yeah.
Saturday, so I'm pretty
That's
sure that's
right.
the cleaning supplies giveaway.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so within the next week, we'll figure out our press release process. We'll get, we'll collaborate with the citizens of Hudson who so graciously said they'll help us out with posting our meetings to Instagram. We have a Facebook presence, right? But maybe, we can task someone with updating that and posting the meetings either in the office. I would think would that be an office thing? Rebecca Wolf, yeah?
I was just curious. I was going to ask Ravonda specifically because, like, your folks live here and I'm in Bliss, and you grew up in this community. Like, is there a kind of like what would you think is the best in terms of the social media, like Facebook? Is there like a good information distribution that happens much on Facebook or?
No, not really. I mean, for the younger crowd, the older crowd, including my parents, are a little trickier. They're more for it being placed in their mailbox or on their door. I know with Columbia Apartments, they're left out a lot. A lot of things they do not know is going on or available for them, because most of the things are posted on the board in Bliss Towers.
Mhm.
In the Columbia Apartment, people only go to Bliss Towers when they're going to pay their rent. So they don't just go in there. They have their own washer and dryer hookup. So I see that they're left out of a lot of things.
Mhm.
So just moving forward, I would make sure that they have everything either taped to their door, in their mailbox, because I know in the past, for years and years and years, they have missed out on a lot.
But you do think that for a certain group, like Facebook and Instagram could be a really,
Oh, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Just a question, Rebecca. Is there, we're going to need to post a flyer advertising the next meeting. Is there someone that wants to frame that up and create some type of flyer that we can put on the bulletin board with what we're intending to do at the next meeting?
So typically is the process that it goes through the executive office, like the administration takes care of that?
Well, yeah, I just need to know what you want on. We can take care of the copies. We just need somebody to write it up how you want it to be worded.
Okay, well, maybe we should just, I know it's 1:50 now. We've had 50 minutes of this meeting. I know, is it still the case, Ravonda, that you have to go at 2?
At 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So maybe is that something that we want to kind of talk about now? Like the wording of this, are we saying we want your input? We need your input. We need your involvement.
Yeah,
There needs to be
absolutely.
something that's like very clear, very big, like we need your input, like be a
Yeah.
part of this process.
Mhm.
Like here's when it happens. Here's what
How
time.
about We're
Here's
gonna
how we
build
get there.
new housing. Come tell us what you want.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like your voice matters.
Your voice
chances in this
matters. Yeah,
process.
exactly.
So like it really has to be something where people are walking by and they're like, oh, because I'm sure there's so many flyers around, there's so much stuff going around, but people need to know that, we're at a point where their opinion, their voice matters, and the board is taking what they want to the table, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we can use that information to make sure that the residents get what they need. So I guess just from a basic framework, right, that's the message, Tim. And if you need, I can send that in an email, but I can I'm happy to design it. I just don't want to create like a precedent where I'm just designing and designing, which I'll be happy to do, but I
Well,
just
there's no
it seems
precedent.
like
I
it's an
just wanna-
administrative thing.
Yeah, well, there's no precedent. I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with whatever's being, publicly displayed. And
Well, are you
what it
able
is you want.
to, are you able to, I know that Rebecca said we're willing to help you this time, but maybe if you did like a draft and like sent it to us and said like, how does this look? Does this sound good or something like that? And then we can let you know what to take out, what to put in.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be awesome. Then we could do a little art collaboration,
And then it's like all of us in this,
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So I'll write up a draft and I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah.
Okay.
that
Yeah,
sounds
thank you so much.
Okay, cool. So, I guess, moving forward for this is like, open everything up, no stone unturned. We want to talk about all of this, and this all is going to be made public, which is very exciting. And
Yes.
so that makes sense that our first goal, our main goal is that we focus on getting the public here, right?
Yep.
This is so
Yeah.
clear.
Are we still
So-
talking about having Darren Scott at this next meeting?
Yeah.
So
But let's
We don't
why
know
we
if he
say-
will be. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying like, why don't we say 1 week is really short notice, right? So
Mhm.
we had this meeting today, but there were not many members of the public here. So why don't we say we'll kind of do like a repeat of this meeting next week, kind of give the outlines, give the illustration, all of that, and start gathering this input. Then we can say, Darren, we got this meeting in 2 weeks. If we can get Darren in the meeting from 2 weeks from now, then we'll
Mhm.
have more information, hopefully on resident input, and we'll have more of an idea of how we're moving forward. And then, he can come into the conversation. It would be really cool to already have, our
Mhm.
ability to like communicate and get resident input before we even talk to Darren. I would say that would be a really important component, because if not, it's just kind of a disjointed board that, if we have the residents here, I think that will make the conversation much more powerful.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
everyone okay with that?
definitely. So we're saying that we're gonna try to get Darren Scott in February 3rd. See if that works for him. And then, yeah, so that sounds good.
Okay, so February 3rd, 1 p.m. And, you know, we're at the whim of other people's schedules, obviously.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we'll just, yeah, Ravonda, you'll reach out and then we'll make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reach out, and then if that doesn't work for him, I'll just let him know we have these meetings Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. So then maybe he can let us know what Wednesday works best for him.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's perfect. And I think one of the things that I just want to say, maybe perhaps in a closing of today's meeting, if everyone's comfortable with that, you know, there's all of these ways that this has been done in the past, and there's a lot of lessons that we've learned on what doesn't work. I think we learned a lot of lessons on what doesn't work, more so than what does. And things just like talking about funding and the possibilities of funding, you know, I just don't want to see us hit roadblocks that we could really actually move through with creative solutions that might have not been employed yet. And so I just want to say that I just want to put this out there as part of our process, is that, you know, there are creative solutions out there, and we will be looking for them. So I just want to add that as like a closing, is that there's a lot of possibilities here, and, you know, we want to create a project that is not only going to be developed, it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be a home, and it's going to provide resources to our community and to our residents. So that would be the closing.
I just want to thank everyone for being here. Everything that everybody is doing is absolutely amazing. And I'm so excited to just keep pushing through.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I
That
think
was
this was a
real
very good
robotic.
meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward, we're looking for resident input for next week, and that's our primary focus. And we'll just do a kind of like repeat meeting next week just to bring everyone in.
Mhm.
And we'll move hand in hand into the future.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so
Okay. Are we? Sorry, go ahead.
Are we leaving?
Are we done?
Are we calling a meeting to end?
that's
We
what
are calling it to end.
I've never.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Do we have to vote on it?
Thank you, everyone.
I think because this is
No.
a subcommittee, or it's like just a committee.
We're pretty
Yeah.
cash.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're cash.
Mhm.
All right. Thank
See
you,
ya,
Rebecca.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you
Okay.
next week.
See you all soon.
Okay.